Everyone thinks March 20th, 1995, was a random terror attack. It wasn't random at all. Been taught to see Aum Shinrikyo as a band of extremists, religious zealots who snapped one day and deployed sarin nerve gas in Tokyo's subway system. 12 people dead, over 5,000 injured. The narrative is clean, cult goes violent, authorities respond, case closed. But I've read the testimonies myself. I've traced the timeline, and the truth is far more disturbing than spontaneous fanaticism. This wasn't a sudden descent into madness, it was deliberate. Calculated and rooted in something that had been festering for nearly 2 decades before that first canister opened. Let me back up. Shoko Asahara founded Aum in 1984 as a yoga and meditation sect. Harmless sounding, right? He was blind, legally blind, and that detail matters. Followers saw him as enlightened, a living Buddha, but Asahara had a different vision. He began teaching that the end times were coming, Armageddon, and that only his followers would survive. By 1989, Aum had thousands of members across Japan. They weren't hiding in the shadows yet. They were recruiting openly, publishing materials, running shops. No one was alarmed. That was the first mistake. But something shifted inside the group. Asahara started acquiring weapons, not just firearms, chemical weapons. He sent members abroad to scout suppliers. He lectured constantly about impending war, about government persecution, about the need to arm themselves. Members who questioned him faced psychological manipulation, sleep deprivation, isolation. I've read the accounts from defectors. They describe a slow erosion. 1 month, you're meditating. 6 months later, you're learning to synthesize nerve agents in a basement laboratory. By 1994, Aum's leadership, including Asahara's inner circle, began planning what they called POA. The concept is twisted. In Tibetan Buddhism, POA refers to a spiritual transfer at the moment of death. Aum twisted it into justification for murder. They believed killing non-believers would actually help those people spiritually. It was theological rationalization for genocide, and they weren't theoretical about it. They began testing. Small-scale poison attacks, biological agents. Each experiment refined their methods. Each failure taught them something. Sarin itself came from a chemist named Masami Tsuchiya. Brilliant man, corrupted by ideology and isolation. He synthesized the nerve agent in Aum's compound, a facility they'd built in rural Yamanashi prefecture. The compound was enormous, thousands of square meters, dormitories, laboratories, weapons storage. Local residents reported strange smells. Police investigated once. They found nothing, or rather, they found nothing they were willing to act on. Bureaucratic hesitation, jurisdictional confusion, the kind of institutional failure that haunts investigations afterward. March 20th arrived. 5 subway lines, 5 teams, 11 members of Aum carrying plastic bags containing sarin in liquid form. The plan was surgical, hit multiple lines simultaneously during morning rush hour. Maximum casualties, maximum chaos. They genuinely believed that this attack would trigger the apocalypse, that it would confirm Asahara's prophecies, that society would collapse and Aum would emerge as the spiritual authority of the new world. It was delusional, but delusion doesn't make the outcome less lethal. At 8:08 a.m., the first canister was punctured on the Marinauchi line. At 8:10, another on the Hibiya line, then the Chiyoda line. Sarin is odorless in its pure form, but this batch wasn't pure. People smelled something chemical, acrid. Passengers collapsed, seizures, loss of bladder control, respiratory failure. The first responders, firefighters, paramedics had no idea what they were dealing with. They weren't equipped for chemical exposure. Many became casualties themselves. I've read the hospital logs. Doctors treating symptoms without knowing the cause. Panic spreading faster than the agent itself. 13 people died that day. 51 more suffered permanent injuries. But here's what the headlines missed: the attack failed. Aum had manufactured enough sarin to kill thousands, but the delivery method was crude. Bags punctured with umbrellas, timing dependent on human judgment. If even one member had been more careful, if the coordination had been tighter, the death toll would have been exponential. This wasn't a failure of execution, it was a failure of engineering. A near miss that could have been Japan's Hiroshima. The investigation that followed was massive. Police arrested Asahara within weeks, then the chemists, then the logistics coordinators. The entire upper echelon of Aum's leadership faced trial. But here's where the real story emerges, the part that changes everything about how we understand this attack. Asahara wasn't directing operations from some shadowy command center. He was largely isolated in his quarters, meditating, increasingly disconnected from reality. The attack was largely orchestrated by mid-level members, talented, educated people, engineers, scientists, people who convinced themselves that mass murder was spiritual practice. This is the dismantling of the charismatic cult leader pulling all the strings narrative. Yes, Asahara created the ideology. Yes, he built the structure. But the attack itself was enabled by institutional momentum, by psychological conditioning so complete that intelligent people rationalized mass killing, by a hierarchy so rigid that questioning orders meant expulsion and social death. The real horror isn't that one man was evil. It's that a system, a carefully constructed, psychologically sophisticated system, could transform ordinary people into weapons. Asahara was executed in 2018, 13 years after his arrest, still claiming enlightenment. Other members received sentences ranging from life imprisonment to shorter terms. Some have since renounced the group. Others remain ideologically committed, even from prison cells. The organization itself didn't die. Splinter groups exist today, though far smaller, far less capable. They still teach that Asahara was enlightened, that the attack was justified. That Armageddon is coming. Ideology doesn't vanish when its leader dies. Sometimes it just goes dormant. The implications ripple forward. Aum proved that a cult operating in a modern, monitored society could still acquire weapons-grade chemical agents. It proved that psychological manipulation could override the moral instincts of educated, intelligent people. It proved that institutional failure, bureaucratic hesitation, jurisdictional confusion, underestimation, could allow catastrophe to incubate for years. Every intelligence agency on Earth learned from this. Every cult watch organization, every counterterrorism unit. But the lesson was learned through bodies, through families destroyed, through a city that still remembers the smell of sarin on a March morning. What Aum Shinrikyo ultimately revealed was this: the threat doesn't always come from external enemies. Sometimes it gestates inside your own city, inside your own institutions, inside the minds of people who convinced themselves they were saving the world. That's the real story. Not a sudden attack, not madness striking from nowhere, but a slow, systematic corruption of human judgment. A gradual transformation of ideology into action. And a system that almost caught it too late. Subscribe to this channel. We explore the cults that shaped history, the ideologies that corrupted millions, and the institutional failures that let them thrive. New deep dives every week. You won't see these stories simplified anywhere else. Subscribe for weekly explorations of history's most dangerous cults, the ideologies, the failures, and the human cost.